Heyo, what is up, everybody? Coach Chad here, the CEO of the Next Level Coaching Academy. I hope you guys are doing amazing. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I apologize for the poor lighting. I am back in Connecticut at my parents' house for the holidays, which is very nostalgic, especially with the podcast that I have planned for you guys today. So what we're going to be talking about today is I'm going to be telling I'll start with this. The goal of this podcast for me is I want to normalize sucking at sales. All right, let me say that again. I want to normalize sucking at sales because most coaches, I'm going to be honest, most coaches right in the beginning suck at sales. They are amazing coaches. They might even be okay marketers, but when it comes to booking calls and getting on a call and closing a deal, they are god awful. And I got to chuckle when I say that, but here's the reason why. The reason why is a coaching energy and a sales energy are two different things. All right. Coaching energy, sales energy, two different things. Natural coaches are not naturally good at sales. And that is perfectly okay. And the purpose of this podcast, like I said, the goal and the aim of this podcast is I want to normalize sucking at sales. And the reason I want to normalize sucking at sales in the beginning is because this is the thing. This is the shit that trips up so many fucking coaches and it infuriates me. They do not want to suck at sales. Therefore, they do not do enough practice to get good at it, right? They're like, oh shit, I suck at this. Maybe they take a call. They have a horrible experience. They're like, fuck, I'm not taking more calls. I'm not booking more deals. Right. And if I could just normalize not being good at something and not being good at sales in the beginning so that you can actually accept that it is going to take the 10,000 hours that it is going to take to get good at it so that you could reach the ultimate pinnacle of getting good at sales and making this business full time. That is my aim. That is the goal of this podcast. And how am I going to do that? How am I going to normalize this for you? I'm going to normalize it through my very own story. All right. And the students inside of NLCA know this about me. I only put shit in our program if it's something that I've done. I only talk about something on this podcast if it's from my own experience, if it's something that I'm done. I am not a theory guy. I am not a, hey, yeah, I think that works and I've never tried it before, yet I'm going to teach my students it. No, that's just not how I roll. The way I roll is I will only talk about something. I will only teach something if it's something that I personally have done myself and have an experience to teach on. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. All right, so let's dive into it. So, as many of you guys know, and if you haven't listened to podcast episode number 1, it's my whole entire story. I started this venture in 2015, which makes me feel like a grandpa in the industry. 2015, 2022. So I guess 7 years I've been doing this. And if you're watching on video, you can see the bags under my eyes. only messing with y'all. And 2015 is when I started. All right. And like most people, when I started, I had a very big coach heart. Right. And what I mean by that is I really wanted to help people. I really just wanted to coach, but I didn't have the skills to acquire clients in order to actually put my coaching skills on display. So I kind of neglected needing that skill for a really long time. And I think for the same reason that most people do, right? They neglect the skill because it's hard, because it's new, and they get comfortable doing the things that feel comfortable, right? Maybe taking on a couple free clients, maybe saying, hey, I'm not going to do the online thing just yet. Maybe I'll go in person, and the company could just get clients for me, or hey, maybe I'll just become an assistant coach first, or whatever it may be, right? All these things feel comfortable. That's why we feel drawn to do them. However, it's the uncomfortable shit that actually builds the business that you're looking to build if you are a true business owner, which if you have that question, you should probably listen to the podcast just before this, where I break down being a business owner versus being an assistant coach. All right, I digress. So getting back to my story. So started in 2015, I probably ignored the need for sales for a solid 2 years, which is, looking back on it, is a really long time to ignore trying to get good at something. But come 2017 is when I decided this isn't working. The strategies that I've deployed here are not working. I'm not getting clients. I'm not growing the business that I want. I'm suffering. I'm dead fucking broke. I'm miserable. I'm anxious. I'm stressed, all these things. And that's when I decided to invest in my first business mentor, which was $6,000. And at the time, I was so freaking broke, man. Like most days of the week, I had negative in my account. If I didn't have negative in my account, I had less than $200 in my account, probably at all times. And I lived in this very basement that I'm recording the podcast in, which is actually pretty funny. This is my parents' basement, and I lived in here because I was a broke chump, a broke little boy. So anyways, I decided I need to invest in a business coach. I need to finally learn these skills. So I got on the phone with the coach. Coach told me it's $6,000. I said, holy shit, I don't have $6,000. I said, give me 2 weeks. I'll come up with the money. After 2 weeks, I came up with $2,000. I sold a lot of the things that I did own and put the $2,000 down. I figured I would get clients and I would be able to pay off the $4,000. No problem. I got this, right? At the end of the program, I only sold one client for $2,000, and that $2,000 was on a year-long payment plan of $200. So if I had 3 months, 3 months in the program, that means that I only collected what, $400, $600. So now I've given this coach $2,600. I'm supposed to give him $6,000, right? So I'm $3,400 in debt. And it's pretty damn miserable, right? So now I have debt collectors coming after me. Now, during that experience, I was told that I needed to get good at sales. So that's when I started taking my first sales call. And I took my very first sales call in this basement. There used to be a desk on to the right of me. There used to be a big desk, and that was my work desk for my non-existent business. And I can remember the call so vividly. I forget the individual's name. I wish I remember the name so I could reach back out and apologize for how shitty of an experience I probably created. But I couldn't get a word in. Like, I picked up the phone and everything was super choppy. My throat swelled up. It clenched. Everything that you would be scared of. Like when I've talked publicly and I've performed way better, right? But there's a lot of fear about talking publicly, like on a stage, that your voice is going to choke up. You're going to sweat. You're going to stutter. I've talked publicly on stages. That's never happened to me. This is the only time that I've talked to somebody publicly that's happened to me. And it wasn't even face-to-face, it was over the phone. So I was so nervous for this call. My throat clenched up. I could barely get a word in. I was dripping sweat. The individual on the other side wasn't helping. He was clearly a business person, like clearly was extremely experienced in taking sales calls. And I could just tell it was just crumbling. And I could just feel the lack of confidence in the call. I could just feel the awkwardness in the call. And like a lot of times he would say, come again. And I could just remember like trying to get words in and I couldn't. And I just ended the call. I just ended the call abruptly. I didn't even get through the full call. Just ended it. Yep. Just ended it. And I was dripping sweat. And I can remember the feeling after that of how fucking embarrassed I was and how I was like, this is just not going to work for me. And that was kind of my thought process for this first business coach that I invested in when it came to sales. So it was completely like as against it as you possibly could be. So once that program finished, after I gotten into a lot of debt joining the program, after I had debt collectors coming after me, after about another 3 months, another business coach came across my radar, and I decided to invest in that business coach. I picked up a job as a waiter. So I was able to, I was able to make the payments. It was another $6,000. I split it up $2,000 a month. I was able to make the payments, but it was like the only thing I could pay for. Like, it was like, I was barely scraping by. However, I had a different mindset going into this. And my mindset going into this was, I need to get fucking good at sales. This is the skill. And this was the first time that I've recognized that, this is the skill that separates coaches. And this might be a really big golden nugget for you. So make sure you listen up. The skill of coaching is not the biggest separator in your business. The skill of sales in the beginning is the biggest separator for businesses right in the beginning. Why is that? Because if you can't sell somebody, you can't put your coaching skills on display. Your coaching skills will be the next separator for you. So the very first separator is how good am I at booking calls and closing deals? Once you have a bunch of clients, the second separator for you is how fucking good is my product so that I get word of mouth, I build a great reputation, right? But the very first skill that you have to develop is I need to learn how to get people in here first. So then I could put my coaching skills on display. And a lot of coaches have that ass backwards. They try to improve the coaching skill, improve the coaching skill, improve the coaching skill. They're trying to become expert doctors at coaching, but they don't even have a client yet. Okay. You just need to be able to get somebody results. If you feel confident that you can get somebody results, you don't need the doctorate yet. Okay. You need to get clients. And then once you get clients, then you can continue to improve your product over time. Okay. So that's one golden nugget for you. Getting back to my story, however. So joined this program, had a completely different viewpoint. I said, this is the skill that I need to get really good at. And that is this is the in-between, right? So I told you the story of my first sales call. This is what I would call the in-between phase. And the in-between phase is hard, but not the hardest. I would say getting over the first sales call is hard, but here's what you can expect in the in-between phase. And when I say in-between phase, I'm talking about in between taking your first call and closing your first deal. All right. For me, the in-between phase was actually pretty damn long. It was about, well, let's date it back. It was probably about 6 to 7 months between me taking my first call and closing my first deal. But it's also because after I took my first call, I took a hiatus, and then I finally decided, hey, I need to commit to this. Okay. So in between phase, I had a totally different perspective. I said, no matter what, my perspective was a lot different. No matter what, I am figuring this out. Throw all the fucking challenges at me. I am going to figure this out. And there was many of calls that I took in between my first and my actual one that I closed that I did not close. Okay. But here's what I did. And here's how relentless I was at harnessing this skill. And I hope to bestow this energy, this thought process, this mindset upon you so that you can reap the rewards of getting good at sales, which I'll talk about here later on in the podcast. All right. So what I did the very first thing I did is I started diving into the course, right? I started showing up to all the calls, and then I did extracurricular activities outside of just consuming the course and showing up to the calls. And the extracurricular activities that I did, and these are things that you should write down if you want to get good at sales, is this book really transformed the game for me. It was Grant Cardone's Closer's Survival Guide. And I remember a very specific moment where I'm in the house, I'm in my parents' house, and I remember a very specific moment where it was snowing outside, and it was probably like 9-10 o'clock at night. And I just decided to go shovel the driveway. So I went out and I started shoveling the driveway, and I'm listening to Grant Cardone's Closer Survival Guide. And it comes to a point. So how the book is laid out is the first half of the book is all like sales theory and mindset. And then the second half of the book, he goes over 100 different objections. Objections are like, I got to think about it. Got to check the budget, got to talk to the spouse. And he goes over 100 different ways of solving different objections. And if you get this book, don't get the written, get the audio, because it's good to hear his tonality when he's going over this. It's good to hear his inflection and how he verbally says it. So during that second half of the book, what I would do is I would listen and I would pause. So I'd listen to how he would say it. I would pause, and then I would repeat it out loud. So if he said to handle objection this way, I'd listen, pause, then I would verbally say it. And I did that for all 100. And I remember doing that as I was shoveling the driveway. And I remember a second time, I went through this book multiple times. I remember a second time where Caitlin was in Ohio, Columbus for the Arnold, and she lost her key. And she didn't have a key to get in her car to go home. And her spare key was back here in Connecticut. So I drove all the way from Connecticut to Ohio, which is a terrible drive. I don't recommend doing it. And I did it through a snowstorm, which added an extra layer of, in my opinion, it was kind of fun, but an extra layer of interest, interesting to that trip. But it was an 8-hour drive, and I did the whole thing again. And I went back and I listened to every objection, recited all of them out loud. And I truly believe if I did not do that, I would not be as good at sales as I am today. And I can close at a 70 to 80%. If you threw me 100 calls, I'd probably close anywhere between 60 to 80 of them. So I've gotten really fucking good at sales. It's probably my best skill, to be honest. So I did that. Okay, that was one of the things that I did that was extracurricular. So you could do the very exact same thing as me. Maybe not driving through the snowstorm part, but the reciting of the book. Okay, so the next thing I did is I would, it's going to be funny when I say it, I would role play with Caitlin, and not the way that you're thinking of it. So get your mind out of the gutter. I would tell her, I'd say, hey, babe, tell me it's too much money. And she'd tell me it's too much money, and we'd go back and forth, and I would handle the objection, and I would work through all the things that I learned from this book that I was reading, right? So more practice, role play. And I actually put this inside of our program where so we have support calls in NLCA every single day. And on the Friday calls, it's objection handling. So it's like literally role play. Like for an hour, you get to role play with a coach and go back and forth, which is probably one of the best activities that you could do aside from actually taking sales calls to get good at sales. So I did that. I read the book, recited the book out loud. I would read my script all the freaking time. I can remember, I don't know where I was flying to, but I remember vividly reading the script on the plane over and over and over again. And I was obsessive, man. Like I said, my mindset was there is nothing that is going to stop me to getting good at sales. And if you even put in 20% of the effort that I put in to get good at sales, you're going to be golden and you're going to be fine. All right. So that was my in-between phase. So recapping, went over, expectations around you're going to suck at sales and you have to accept that. Went over my first sales call, talked about what I did in between. Now I'll tell you the initial results. All right. So I'm going to break this into two more parts. I'm going to talk, I don't know what just happened to my voice. I'm going to talk about the initial result when I closed my first deal. And I'm going to talk about the long-term results of spending all this time of getting good on sales. Okay. So here is the story behind me closing my first sales call. So I was still living in my parents' basement, and I drove an $800 Jeep Cherokee. Piece of shit, honestly. I used to call it Betsy, and I used to record a bunch of YouTube videos. So I still have a bunch of videos of the car, but anytime that you would try to turn the car on, it would, every single time I'd have to ask myself, fuck, I hope it turns on today, because it would go, and then eventually it would turn over. And that was every single time I turned it on. And there was multiple times where it wouldn't turn on and I didn't have a ride. And yeah, I couldn't really afford gas. Nonetheless, it was a piece of shit car. $800 is how much the car cost. The bottom was kind of falling out of it. I remember one time I was driving on the highway, and you know how on old cars, the gas tank was in the back and there was like a metal shield that went over the gas tank. The metal shield just dropped on the highway, and it was just my gas tank, my plastic gas tank with a metal shield dragging on the highway with sparks going on it. And it was just not a safe car. Hopefully that paints the picture of the kind of car that it was. All right. So I was driving to CrossFit, because I did a lot of CrossFit at the time, and I had a call. So I had the CrossFit class was at a certain time. The call was an hour before it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take this call. So I took the call in my car, and I closed the individual. His name was Joseph Aldama. He was my very first client. And he was with me the whole entire time that I had my fitness business. He was a client the whole entire time. Talk about retention, right? I must have done a really good job on the sales call. But yeah, I closed him in the car, and he paid $1,600. He paid 800 down, and 800 was to be paid in like the next 45 days or something like that. So I closed a client that was worth double the car that I closed the client in. And I can remember just punching the ceiling of my car and just complete excitement. It was one of the best feelings that I've ever experienced. I remember crying. I remember punching the car. I felt all the emotions. I was excited. I remember calling Caitlin. I remember just this big, massive feeling of relief, and just like this big facet, I'm getting like the chills, a little bit choked up. This big, massive feeling of like, I can fucking do this. And after that first one is when things really started to pick up for me. And I remember very shortly after that, I had my first $10,000 month. And the thing with sales is a momentum game. It's a contact sport. You have to, it's input versus output. It's how much am I putting in is how much you're going to get out. And that's completely what sales is. It's just contact sport, energy. What you put is what you put out. So I built this massive amount of momentum, and I was able to create a very, very, very successful business. And long term, getting into long term, right? So that was the immediate short term result. Long term, in hindsight, I am so grateful. I didn't know that this would be so beneficial for me, but I am so grateful that my mentors, the second mentor, told me that I need to really focus on sales, and that I was able to actually have that perspective shift of I need to get really good at sales. And the reason that I'm so grateful for it is, well, now I get to coach people on how to sell, right? And I wouldn't have the ability to create this amazing business in NLCA if I never got good at that one skill of sales, right? Because that's what so many people struggle on, and that's my strong suit. So, NLCA has been successful because we have successfully been able to teach other people how to sell. So I'm extremely grateful for that. But I'm also extremely grateful because your ability to sell is really going to determine how far you can take your business. And now NLCA is a multiple 7-figure business on the fast track to becoming an 8-figure business, because I learned those skills, and now I'm able to transfer those skills to our students, right? Which creates a great experience for them. But I'm also able to transfer those skills to my employees, to my staff members that are now selling, right? So I just can't say enough that the ability to sell and the skill of sales is something that you should really commit to. And, I even think this, like, even if NLCA, let's say, it didn't work out and everything crumbled, I would do one of two things. I'd either start a different business, or I would just become a salesperson, and I would just, use that skill. Because when you have the ability to sell, you'll never not have a job. You'll never not be broke, and you'll never be unemployed if you have the ability to sell, because everybody needs salespeople. It's one of the hardest and most high-paying skills out there. All right, so I'm going to wrap this podcast up by saying I hope that this podcast was able to teach y'all that it's okay to suck at sales in the beginning. It's extremely normal. Even somebody now who owns a multiple 7-figure business, when he started, was an absolute trash pile at sales. But I committed. I was relentless in the pursuit of developing the skill. And this is the skill that I would attribute my success to. Really, two things: the ability to work very hard and the ability to sell, I would say, are the two skills that have led me to have some success. So once again, hopefully I was able to normalize that. It's okay to suck in the beginning. It's going to take 10,000 hours, but I promise you, if you commit to this skill, it's going to be something that you're forever grateful for.